Hey, we're live, and I'm here with
Hello.
Teri, and we were just discussing backstage the fun stuff we're going to talk about today. Do you want to kick it off, Teri? Because you kind of,
Yeah. We're talking about basically being in the now, being present. And Tyler's present, my dog, right now. So he wants to talk about it too. But being in the moment and
mm-hmm,
present. Um, and how often our bodies become, our physical forms become dysregulated, but also our emotional bodies and our spirit bodies. And it's so easy to look into your heart space. And is your heart pumping? Is it like, racing? And we're kind of taught to persevere through all this.
mm-hmm,
Society teaches us that, and our parents may have taught us that, or our religions, whatever we grew up with. But but really, we are taught to just keep going, persevere, get through it,
mm-hmm,
run here, run there, get her done. And and it's so important about the journey. It's all about the journey.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I don't know if
And
that described it very well.
no, it's really moving ahead into the unknown with courage. I mean, trust me, I have a great one of my thumbnails I put up every once in a while. It said, "People tell you not not to bother with that," and then there's this bird on the shore, and a bird is there, and he's reaching his foot out to touch that. That's me. That's how I deal with it. I'm going to reach over and touch it. All the things, but there's a lot of times when you're just so frustrated because the timing isn't there. You know, it's like Baruch Assault in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I want it, and I want it now, and I want to wait. I want it now. It's like there's a bunch of us like the election, like tomorrow, just so we don't have to hear about it anymore. But and so you know, moving ahead with courage is not getting def- deflected off to the that's that you can always find to not do what you ought to do, and or to or to stretch yourself a little too far. I was telling Terry that I read a real live people party. It was an opening of a showroom here in Dallas on Saturday night, and I read from 7:30 until 10. And when I said I read, it's like it's a chat room that's real people, and there's always one next after the next after the next. But I saw clear patterns, and what's interesting for me when I read live people, when I think about what the overall feeling was of the evening and the sort of tenor of the readings, if they're really good, happy readings and things are falling together for people and stuff, that tends to be what starts to happen around me because you're the obvious. If you believe in the spiritual, you're going to draw the people you can communicate with.
Right.
And so there are three people who I read. These are just random folks that showed up at this store opening who are in $1 million lawsuits, and I mean $1 million lawsuits. All three of them are waiting in the final dispositions, and all of them are going to come out fine. But for them, the older man, he was older than I was. He said, "I'm so damn tired of waiting on this. It's a large sum of money from a company that got sold or done. I don't know what happened to it, but anyway, he's waiting on about $25 million. I'd be frustrated too. I told him, honey, I'd be living in an office, but that doesn't help it. You have to just let those things wind out. But I said, but you've had good news about it, and he said, yeah, I got it. The first good news I've had in months today, and I think, and what I saw is going to have it by late spring. But the cop out we tarot readers have, you can never tell what's going to happen on a timeline. The universe shifts things, so if it doesn't come through, we always have that dodge.
Yeah.
But I also read a lot of people who were just really finally happy with where they were,
Yeah.
and um, and they had to go through some stuff and just decide this is where I am, and this is what I want to do. And I'm at a point where I'm having to make a lot of decisions because I feel safe enough to go out in the world. I came home from that party and I'm not sick. When I've gotten sick after being out with people, it's immediate. Um, even when I got COVID. But, and this fall is the season when people go looking for readers. Can you come to my house? Can you do this? But it was a lovely crowd of people. I had a great time. Met some wonderful folks. Met a guy who just decided he really didn't like what he was doing, and the only way he could get to the next step was to be out of what he was doing. So he saved his money up, and now he's got so many months to get back into another thing, whatever it is. So, and he's going to make it. But,
Yeah.
and I was really pleased to see how many people seem to be facing it courageously. Because trust. Mm-hmm.
We've had some practice, haven't we? I mean, we've had the Great Reset with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, we had a pretty big economic reset. It seems like I guess every century has resets, but it seems like we've had quite a few, and it seems, the energy looks like we're going to have some more, but it's definitely a good time to do that, to look at what we're doing, and if that's our hearts are content, and if we're happy, or if we are just racing through time trying to get this and that and this and that done. And I do think that sometimes in the spiritual community too, that it's real easy to do that, because not that we disassociate, but we can kind of be out there a little bit, or at least I can be. I'm going to honor that.
No, it's true. I can do a whole lot of readings, and I can remember a few of them because they're really vivid.
Yeah.
And some of them, or they have a theme that showed up.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be bad, but now it's getting better. Kind of was a lot of the theme I had. I thought that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it is good. Anyway, lots of good people coming in here.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, nice to see y'all.
Do you want to read the poem, or do you want me to read the poem?
Oh, either way, I'm fine with that.
Why don't you read it? Because you've got a prettier voice than I have.
Oh, you're so sweet. Let me find it real quick. It's right here. Oh, I love this poem. It's just beautiful.
And the author of this poem is John Rodell. John Rodell. It's Roedel. If you go just Google him, you will find some of them are really short, but you're always talking to God in these poems.
Yeah. So it's let's see. In the conflict between the head and the heart, this poem takes me on a journey to a place where I can breathe. Poem by John Rodell. My brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big a mess I have become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Now my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on weekends. They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass to each other every week. And their notes they send to one another always say the same thing. This is your fault. On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past. On Wednesday, my head lists all of the times my heart has screwed things up for me in the future. They blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying. So, lately, I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist. Most nights, I seek out of the window in my rib cage and slide down my spine and collapse on my gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit until the sun comes up. Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my heart and my head. I nodded. I said I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore. My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented. My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future, I sighed. My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should go stay with your lungs for a while. I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you're exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focus on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you. There is no yesterday in your lungs. There is no tomorrow either. There is only now. There is only inhale. There is only exhale. There is only this moment. There is only breath. And in that breath, you can rest while your heart and head work their relationship out. This morning, while my brain was busy reading tea leaves and while my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs. Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile as the gust of air embraced me, and she said, "What took you so long?"
I love that poem.
I do too. I laughed at Nancy Jean sent me this poem this weekend at the perfect time when I had just been through that scenario.
I know, and it points out to us that it is our brain that moves way too quickly and always projects out what's going to happen. And it is our heart that always says, "Oh, if it only could have been as good as it looked in this photograph from way back when." Or why didn't that happen? It holds on to that. And it was really letting go of all that stuff. And a lot of that happened during COVID. I had to learn I've been around meditation for a long time. It was not my first choice of activity. Can I put that to you, mind? The best meditation I can do is knitting, and get in that mindless state. But, or baking bread, but I can't do that because I'm on keto. So there's not a lot to bake. But when I read that poem, I almost cried because it was so true. When I'd learned how to just get into my lungs and either be inhaling and bringing in what's happening and exhaling, and that little space in between where we really, truly just exist. And in doing that on some Joe Dispenza meditations, slowly my adult asthma went away.
Wow.
And my adult asthma was a direct effect of something that happened to me when I was very young. I almost choked to death. And it was that memory would trigger out of my head. And I felt it go away. So I went to my doctor who I still have a huffer, a steroid huffer, but I use it for colds. I don't use it for asthma anymore. But I went in and she listened to my heart and my lungs. And she said, "We're going to have to take an x-ray. Is that okay?" And I said, "Do you think you need it? I'm fine." So I trotted down to the x-ray place. They took an x-ray of my lungs. And when I came back and sat down and looked at her, she said, "How did you do it?" And I said, "How did I do what?" And she said, "The scar tissue at the base of your lungs is gone." So I'm not going to guarantee for you if you follow Joe Dispenza's thing or anybody else, that's going to happen for you. But I know it happened to me. Of course, my doctor's given up trying to figure out what's happening with me. They do.
Yeah.
We're all wired differently.
Yeah. It's pausing that moment, like a pause between your breath work or a pause between your mind work, right? And a pause between spirit, that in between. With Deepak, that's what we call the gap, the space between time and space. And the space between light, the space between molecules, or the space between breath. It's like infinite potential. It's kind of like when they talk about the violet ray and Lady Nada and Saint Germain, that space, that in between.
Right.
Yeah. It has so many different connotations physically and mentally and spiritually.
And it is things when things are not going. I think it's kind of cute when he talks about his bag and moving up and down between the organs. So I'm going to hustle up and down the chakras and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Debbie's saying, wow, I never considered that my asthma could be from almost choking to death as a child.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Oops. I love Sharon, but that's not what I meant to highlight.
Yeah. Right above Sharon. Debbie 3 shifting veils.
Yes.
But it's so true. Yeah.
And there are things, and they can be because I was choking on a baby bottle. That's how little I was when we
Wow.
finally woke in the memory and figured out why I would have this weird thing that would happen periodically. And then I had bacterial and viral pneumonia at the same time. And I mean, my whole body just cratered. And when they first admitted me to the hospital, they put me in the cancer ward because they thought I had lung cancer. That's how dysfunctional my lungs were. And that happened at the same time. The day they admitted me to the hospital is the day my older brother called me and said, Dad's really sick and they want to do surgery and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, why are they asking you? He said, I have medical power of attorney, which would make sense. He was an attorney. And I said, didn't you ever discuss living and dying with Daddy since you had that? He said, hell no. Why would I talk about that with him? Well, this explains the entire closeness of my family. Anyway, my dad and I, a year and a half before when my husband was dying, my father was a retired physician. So I'd call him and read him the reports they were giving me and saying, my mind's telling me this, they're telling me do that. And he said, you're in the right sphere. And my father and I had 3 months to discuss not being attached to tubes. My father just said, do not put a feeding tube in him. If they put a feeding tube in him, he could stay alive forever. And nobody wants to be like that. And my dad used to be the doctor. He was the anesthesiologist in the hospital. He had to decide when to take people off life support. So he had an up close and personal look at it. And he'd already told me, I don't want to die like that. If I get something that's that bad, just let me go. And so now, mind you, my brother's screaming at me, what should I do to take care of Dad? And I'm lying in a gurney in the emergency room, ready to be put in the hospital for what's wrong with my lungs. And fortunately, the doctors were out for a while. I got to talk to David and explain why I knew. And finally, the doctor came in and he goes, you shouldn't have that cell phone in the room. And my brother said, where the hell are you? I said, I'm in the hospital. And he said, why? And I said, they're admitting me because I have some kind of lung thing. And I said, his choice was to let Daddy go, just not do it, keep him comfortable, or they were going to do emergency surgery that night on a bowel obstruction, which was, they had him so doped he wasn't feeling any pain. I said, let him go. And I said, what's the chances of him surviving surgery? And he said 50-50. I said, he didn't want to live his life on that kind of role. Yeah. And so finally, the doctor took the phone away from me and he goes, who are you? And he said, I'm her older brother, David. Who are you? And he said, I'm Dr. Da-da-da, and she's being admitted to the oncology ward. And then I could hear David really screaming. And I said, just give me the phone back and give me 30 seconds. And I said, David, let him go. And then I said, if you need to talk to me about me, call the kids, because I had grown children, Sean and Casey at the time, who could answer questions. And make a long story short, they admitted me that night to the oncology ward. Now, mind you, I grew up around hospitals. And now I know what oncology means. I was so out of it, I didn't realize I was being put on the cancer ward. And I got a phone call the next day at 5 a.m. that Daddy died that night. Mm-hmm. It was his birthday. Made it one more year, but he died. And so my own doctor, my personal physician, came in and she said, I understand your father's died. Is there anything we can help you with? And I said, no, because I couldn't bring him back to life in Illinois. You certainly can't do it here. And she said, you do know you're not going to that funeral. She said, you need all the oxygen support we're giving you to stay alive right now. And I said, I'm aware of that. So I sent my 2 kids. And they had never spent a lot of time around my siblings. And they went up there and they stayed up there for 5 days. And then they came back. And I was still in the hospital. And they drove to the hospital and ran up the 4 flights of stairs and hugged me and said, how could you have been raised with those people? I said, well, yeah. And by this time I was feeling better. So I could I said, I'm sorry to have sent you into that war zone, but they said it explained a whole lot to them.
It does, doesn't it? And it's kind of nice for you in a way. I mean, not nice that your dad passed. I'm sorry about that, but we do revert back to when we were like 12 and 15 or
Mm-hmm.
something a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. And it's hard. Yeah.
You know how skinny hospital beds are, especially because at this point, guys, it's when I weighed like 335. So I filled the bed. And I remember that morning lying in the bed and feeling like a 5-year-old. Like there was all this vast bed around me and all this vast space around me. And I just had to know. But my dad and I had more than enough time when he helped me settle my husband's problems to have settled his. But,
that's amazing.
so sometimes the universe puts you in places where you go into the unknown with courage, just as you have no other option.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad, I was helping out with him and my stepmom when he passed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always kind of a blessing that he went first, just for several reasons. And she had dementia. But it was a good time, and she was really just a doll at the end, and so sweet. But it would have been harder and harder for him.
Well, my parents did the opposite way. My dad had been having heart attacks since he was in his 30s, and it was always, every time we got a phone call, his dad dead. And he died in his 80s, by the way. But my mother had died the year before of a really weird side effect of cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And she went like that, and they kind of knew she was getting sicker and sicker. So they had her signed up to go into, I'm going to tell you all my family death stories. They had her signed up to go into hospice care.
Yeah.
And the reason my father knew about hospice care was from dealing with me and my husband, because I had to find it for him. So he just followed my day by day. This is how you find hospice care. So he'd found it for her. And finally, the nurse that was taking care of her at home said she can't stay here anymore. She needs more 24-hour care than we can give her here. So she'd seen the place, and she'd be really lucid sometimes, but the problem was her heart wasn't pumping blood right. So she'd have periods of time where she didn't know where she was. And they took her and dropped her off, and she knew that she was going in. And it was late in the afternoon, and my father said, my parents had a lot of money. They had a chauffeur named Bill that was on call, and he'd taken them there, and they got her all settled. And she said, look, you have Bill take you home. I know the chef, because this is the other thing, because my dad couldn't cook. She'd hired a chef several months before to do all the cooking. The chef's dropped off the meals. You and Bill go eat your meals and come back, and I'll be settled in my room, and we can talk then. And he said, okay. And he said, do you want me to call the kids and tell? She said, no, don't worry about it. You just go home, eat your meal. He was standing outside the door of his condominium. He lived in the middle of the Las Vegas Country Club on the 17th floor. And he's sticking the key in the door, and the phone rang, and he looked at Bill and he said, she's dead. And Bill said, Doc, she was talking to us. She was fine. You're upset because she's in the hospital. I'll go take care of the phone. You go do what you need to do. And my dad watched Bill pick the phone up and go hello and explain who he was. And he turned around and looked at my dad and said, she's gone. They were out of the room 10 minutes. And the nurses went in to see if she wanted to have another cup of tea. And she was gone. She just went to sleep. Her mother did the same thing. Her mother sent the caretaker away and said, it's okay, honey, I'll be fine. I had a lovely Christmas, but I don't want to live with another Canadian winter. And when the nurse person came in, she was just asleep with her teacup there. And she didn't want to do another Canadian winter, so she just decided to leave. So I keep telling my kid there's going to be no dramatic, emergency room scenes for me. They'll just find me gone one day. But it's not for a while. My grandmother was 106. My mother would have made it to 100, but the cancer thing. Mm-hmm. Everything else worked.
Man. Wow. Well, yeah, my mom passed pretty early, and she was surrounded by all of us, and I think that was hard for her in hindsight. But it's interesting. My youngest brother was 12 at the time, and he said nobody told him that she was dying. And I guess we all knew she was dying, but it's just something we didn't bring up.
Oh, my second husband, this is going to be the most morbid show. God, they're not fleeing. We've got 61 people watching us, and they're not fleeing. We'll get to your answers in a second. My youngest was 13 when his dad was diagnosed with, he had a stroke.
Yeah.
And that's how come I've been watching Trump deteriorate. And I'm going, oh my God, it's like what we saw happening with Bill, but we kept saying, no, that's not what's really happening. But anyway, he was 13 and we told him he could ask us any question at any time. And his school, he went to school on a city bus. He had another city bus he could take and go to the hospital. He went and saw his dad every day in the hospital and, talked to the nurses and kind of figured out what was going on and was around it. And then it was when Bush was running for the second time as president. And Bush won. And my son looked at me and he said, Dad's not going to live much longer. He can't stand there. Oh. And so he knew everything. And when we put him in the hospice, we explained to him what it was for. And that was bicycling distance from our house. And he'd bike over and sit and talk with his dad and show him what he was doing at school and talk to him about stuff. And he said he's so glad he had that time. And his dad told him, because by this time we knew Bill had cancer too, and he was wasting away. And we told Patrick, if it comes to a point where you just don't want to see your dad like that anymore, you don't have to go. Yeah. And his dad told him, you don't have to go. And the Monday before his dad died on a Saturday, the Monday before, he said, I really can't see him get any skinnier. I mean, this is not good. So we said, fine. And by that time, his older siblings had moved in and were watching him. So I could spend all my time taking care of him, being around. I mean, that's nothing I could do. But just being there. And finally, the Thursday before he died, Bill had a really lucid Thursday. And he said, I just want to see him one more time. Mm-hmm. And he looked at him and he said, I always thought I'd see you be 18. I can't believe I'm going to have to leave before that. You're such a great guy. And that was the last conversation.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful.
So,
yeah,
I don't have any more dying relative stories. I've avoided the rest of them when they died.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to discuss. We don't talk a lot about it. They showed me, and some of you have heard this before, my death, a vision of it years ago. And it was like, and it's like a thing where we all celebrate it. Like a time is coming where there's a certain place, and it was like a meadow. I mean, it was just beautiful. There were flowers everywhere, and everybody walked there with me. Hi, Dr. Gale. And we're talking about death right now. And so I laid down on the flowers, and I kind of stepped out of my body. I just let go. It was a beautiful thing, and everybody was smiling. And then my guides were all there, and my angels, and they said, we told you never had to worry. It all worked out great.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't I listen to that?
I know. Well, the other thought that we found on the interwebs is this little thought, and this is from Findhorn Foundation. They have a fairy thought they send out once a week.
I love them.
And they're so much fun. Anyway, this one is, never waste time and energy wishing you were somewhere else doing something else. Accept your situation and realize you are where you are, doing what you're doing for very specific reasons. Realize that nothing is by chance and that you have certain lessons to learn, and that the situation you are in has been given to you to enable you to learn those lessons as quickly as possible so that you can move forward, onward and upward in the spiritual path. Surely you do not want to be stuck in a rut. Oh God, I hate ruts. No matter how safe and secure the rut may appear to be, think how dull and uninteresting it would be if that rut were your choice. Life is full of excitement, expectancy when you are willing to move through fearlessly into the unknown and take the next step to the in absolute faith and confidence that with me, capital M me, as your guide for companion, fear not, for I am with you always. So
That's beautiful. Keeps coming back to that I am, doesn't it?
right.
Yeah.
And in these times, although things seem really, really good and they're all seem to be flowing many things in the right way, think about what people try to do to screw it up. They try to throw in something that's fantastical, like Kung Pao Meow, that stuff. And the other weird things that are, you pick up the news and you're looking going, how is this happening? And then there's these lovely, sane people saying, we should do this to help people. And people act like that's a weird set of circumstances. So it's, we all have the paths that we were set on.
Yeah. Yeah. We all had intentions and soul contracts when we come here, that we can change those and we can accomplish those and do what we want to do, I think. But we all have free will too. So we can have as much fun as we want or create as much mischief like some people do. And that will remain nameless. But we can really act with abandon, but also act with precision and love, and that in-between state, just following that in between. And I think a lot of this that we're talking about is about abiding in your heart, like what you truly want. How does your body, first of all, recognizing what your body feels like in the moment.
Right.
Like, how am I feeling? Being curious. And once you bring curiosity into the picture, fear won't live with curiosity. It's a different part of the brain. So just even thinking about how your heart feels, how your lungs feel.
Yeah, I had arrhythmias for a while, and they put a heart monitor on me. And I think I had the arrhythmias, so they would put a heart monitor on me, because then while they were monitoring my heart, I disappeared off the monitor for 3 hours in the middle of the night one night. And the clinic called me the next day and they said, why'd you take the monitor off? And I said, I didn't. And they said, well, then apparently this one has a flaw, so we're going to send you a new one. You know how to attach it. They're like sticky on things. They're like not very big. You can wear them and be discreet about the fact someone's trailing you all around. And you're like, and I sent it back in, and I talked to my physician afterwards, and there had been 2 incidents, and he couldn't figure out why I was still alive, because I was beating at 200 beats per minute for 2 hours. And he said, and you're not feeling any, I said, no, I feel fine. Back to the drawing board. Anyway, my doctor happens to be ethnically Indian, and his aunt is one of the most famous astrologers in India. And I told him what I do, and he said, you're not built like us. You guys just aren't. My aunt has all kinds of things. And he said, did you know that you leave your body like that? So totally? And I said, no. And I said, but I just know things I shouldn't know. He said, well, that's when they're telling you. And he said, so we're just going to mark that. We'll monitor you in a year or so. Never had arrhythmias again. Never had any of those problems again.
Wow.
People are like, you tell your doctors what you do? What the hell am I supposed to do? I mean, when I was an accountant, I told them I was an accountant. They didn't ask me to do their taxes. I don't know.
I love that. I love that.
We're going to get to some of the questions.
Okie dokie.
Okay. My stepdad finally said to me earlier this year that I can sleep when I'm dead. Just work overtime. I was being offered it, but I had to bite my tongue really hard. Yeah.
Good for you.
That is the greatest generation sort of cop out. Just keep your working. Maybe you won't notice how bad it is.
Yeah. I have friends that do that. I've heard that so many times. you can sleep when you're dead.
That's what coaches tell you. That's what Walls told us. You can sleep when you're dead. Well, having a bunch of PTSD Democrats who haven't slept for 6 months isn't going to get them elected either.
No. Mm-mm.
And this is a follow-up of the woman who was told to work overtime. Side note, she's fighting panic disorder. And I have a daughter who was diagnosed, well, she said I could talk about it. She was diagnosed as ADHD, which she had never, people were always amazed at how organized and how she could get all this stuff done. Well, if you don't stop, you do. But it eventually wore her down, and she's got she gets a little manicky at times. And then she got in a job situation that was guaranteed to make you manic. If she hadn't been before she got there, she would be. And she finally broke down, and she's done the whole deal, gone to the doctors, done all the blood work, has a shrink, has a counselor. Her counselor cut her loose. And the psychiatrist said, "Why aren't you seeing the counselor anymore?" She said, "She told me I was too well adjusted and need to talk to her." I'm sorry, I'm well.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, I get that. My daughter was like, "What? Haven't you seen somebody for this dysregulation that you kind of?" Because there are times when I really totally tell myself what I'm doing wrong, and why did you do that? Blah 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 blah. And it would be nice to talk to somebody. I said, I make friends with all my therapists, and then that goes out the ball game. So they're like, "Oh, you're fine. Call me up if you want to talk, but you're fine." I'm like,
Okay.
"No, I'm really not."
And this is a lovely lady with PTSD. I'll tell you, the first thing is get a lot of Amazonite around you. It's a wonderful soothing stone. And I'd start there, and then I'd add fluorites, because they kind of take care of everything. And their fluorites come in all sorts of colors, and you can see what to do with them. There isn't time to tell you exactly what to do with them. And she had one further questions about which crystals shouldn't be mixed. You have to do that by how the crystal reacts with you. Now, if you pick a crystal that the history of it is, say, a clear quartz with a perfect point, is something that activates lots of stuff and gets stuff going, and you put that next to a calming, well, which do you want? And that's exactly what they're going to say. I would say don't put a pointy crystal near your bed when you want to sleep at night, one that's got a point on it, because that point is aimed at your third eye, and it will wake you up. Otherwise, I did a show on crystal chaos, and I promise I will write down in my notes today. I need to do another one.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 years ago, Danny and I did a whole show on death and dying, and we did it with Medium Kim, the one that's,
I love her.
yeah, and his brother, who's a chaplain at a major hospital. And we talked about what you need to know, because I talked about the same thing, some of the stuff around my husband when he was dying. And Danny, because I had just had a whole bunch of readings with people. Oh, how could I make it up to my brother that I wasn't this and that? And I'm like, if it's best if you talk about it first. And one lady, she was looking for to be consoled, because her family ended up in a fist fight in the hallway of the hospital, because they all had different opinions about how someone should be treated. And the person was unconscious, and they couldn't ask them. So the doctors are sitting there going, which one do we follow? They will remove you from the hospital, by the way, if you have fist fights there. So if when you're in good health and it's a bright, sunshiny day and you're feeling wonderful, that's probably the time to think, who do I want to leave in charge of me if I can't say what I need to have done?
Yeah. Medical power of attorney. Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client who called me, and she'd gone home because her mother was really sick, and it ended up she had stomach cancer, and her family was relatively dysfunctional. And she said, "Nancy, what am I going to do? I think she's going to die pretty soon, and I don't know what to do." I said, "What's your mom want to do?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Doesn't she have a medical power of attorney?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, you need to run down to the nurse's station now and ask them who in the hospital can help you with that, Social workers will help you with that. Some people have lawyers in the hospital that will help you with that. And that's what she did. So she got all the paperwork done, and her mother said, no, I don't. Her parents were kind of anyway, her mother did not want her father to say what happened to her because he refused to believe she was ill. The whole time she'd been ill and in the hospital, he wouldn't visit her because she was going to come home. And if he babied her by going to the hospital, it would help. And my poor friend, they're two kids, and they would have ended up fighting in the hallway. So she got all the medical power of attorney, talked to lawyers about the situation was. They said, and her mother, but the other wrinkle is her mother only speaks Chinese. So they had to go get a Chinese translator for the legal documents. But they got it all done in 48 hours. And 48 hours later, after that, her mother died. And her father showed up at the hospital and says, they knew her mother was dying, so they were putting her in palliative care. And the father showed up in his bathrobe, in his bed slippers, screaming that he was the only one who could say what would happen to his wife. And they said, nope, we got the law on our side. And he did get escorted out of the hospital. And so my friend managed to handle a whole funeral and everything, had it all worked out. She was 31 years old when this happened. She knew nothing about power of attorney. She knew nothing about any of this stuff. And she said, if I hadn't called you that night and said, I'm just not sure what to do, I would have been in what you call the rage of death with my family. And she said, and she goes and speaks to young adult groups where they meet. And if they want to have a speaker, she talks about how to be ready for your parents' death and what you need to know and how to be ready for yours. Because both she and her husband have done those documents. And so if you haven't done those documents, you can find them online. You can also read about it. If AARP and most insurance companies have some pretty good tutorials on how to get ready for death.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also a lot of good things that you can do with your accounts and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's another really important thing. I know, especially if you're in a position like my stepmom and my dad. They kept everything pretty well separated, but he actually did a great job. He did an excellent job of keeping everything separated, and everything was boom, 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 boom. Very little went into probate. I've done that with my kids, but I haven't done power of attorney, medical attorney. I need to do that.
I have it done. My boy said, don't
that.
put our names on it. So, and I asked my daughter, and she said, yeah, I won't let them do anything that, she said, I'll do what you want. So,
yeah.
Like boys can get clingy. Okay, here's somebody who went to a doctor. Yes, I have been told by my doctor I reversed what was happening to me too. 2 weeks after my ultrasound, we are blessed. Well, thank you. See?
I love that, Sonia. I'm so proud of you. I think about that all the time. It's amazing.
And this is another person who had a choking on bacon when she was little. And her mom got it out. And she doesn't touch ham to this day.
Yeah, it's amazing how that affects us, doesn't it? We remember.
Right. Here's Annie Bear. She's swishing through with affection and drinking a cup of tea.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah.
Glad to have positive support here.
Thanks, Annie.
Oh, here's another person I had to let my dad go. I had the power of attorney over his medical issues. Dad was a firefighter and a paramedic and was clear on his final wishes. It was hard, but I fully understand and honored his will. And see, that's the other thing about handing that to somebody. They don't have to worry about was that what they really wanted done?
Yeah.
And trust me, I hear about that all the time when I'm doing readings. We weren't sure if that's what Mom really wanted.
Well, it's interesting too, isn't it? Because when we're on this side of the veil, there's a lot of constructs of what we believe. And then on the other side, I mean, who am I to say to another person that that's not going to matter to you on the other side? But really intuitively, I feel like a lot of times that doesn't matter on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
You're ready to go. You're ready to go. So I like that walking out of your body.
Mm-hmm. That's what I intend to do.
Yep.
Oh,
You're gone.
yeah, somebody said she had to sign the care and comfort. That's the palliative care for her brother. And it is hard because you're understanding I'm letting this go.
Yeah. That's really hard. I know my late husband had been sick with brain cancer, and there'd been a lot going on in the family, and he came back home to die. But really, they thought he'd pass within hours, and it was 3 days. And my
Mm-hmm.
daughter knew. She said it's going to be Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, and bam, that's when it happened.
Well,
So
good for her. Okay, this year, this is a great subject to discuss. It really is. Many of us will have to face death in different ways. All of us are going to have to face it in one way or another. Knowing we are not alone is so comforting. Thank you, Jen. That's a lovely thought.
oh, Jen, that's beautiful.
You know,
That is beautiful. Yeah. Debbie she and her husband have everything laid out on what to do.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here's a person who, thank you for talking about this. I am on it hospice style right now with Mr. Dementia brother just passed. Great grief sandwich. Yeah. It's just, but if you have people around you that understand, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Dr. Gail, this lady wants your email. She can go to your website, Dr. Gail Skywalking with Moon, and your email's there. So you can find her there.
Yeah. Lori, I can send it to you. I think I've got your email, don't I, Lori? So email me, Lori. Ask me for it if you want to. Or Dr. Gail will email you.
Yeah, if you've ever seen Our Town, the play Our Town, there's a character who dies and she comes back and she's trying to talk to her family to tell them she's really okay, and her mother's still grief stricken and stuff, and she's walking around talking and they're paying no attention to her. It's a very famous scene from that. And
wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think most of us have probably had our parents come back or some loved one come back and talk to us.
Yeah, my father came back and he worked in hospitals. He always smelled like, that smell that's in hospitals.
Yeah.
And one night, and I don't know why he showed up that night. I didn't get any supremely incredible message, but I could smell him all over my bedroom. And I wasn't going through. Trust me, you could have shown up a little earlier to be supportive, but.
Yeah, my dad and my stepmom would show up, both of them together, and they'd say, Teri, Teri, Teri.
Mm-hmm.
And then the phone would ring or the doorbell would ring. And they'd always warn me when something was going to happen.
Mine figure out I already know it. That's what people always say. Didn't you know you were going to have this happen? No. We can't read for ourselves.
Yeah, it's hard to read your family.
Okay, I'm okay. It's a wild adventure, and my kids are wackos like Mom. We see things through the eyes of the spirit. It makes a difference. Acceptance is major, and that's true. Accepting what's going on.
Yeah, I love that, Julie. It is. It's when you fear it and you don't accept it. If you have an acceptance of it, you can really take a step forward and work with your lungs, can't you? Your heart.
Oh, here's someone who has a really positive view on current American life. It's social conditioning, living the dream. A slave to the machine is the downside. Yeah.
Amen, warrior girl. I love that. She's amazing, warrior girl. Been on that path a long time.
And Candy Mullen could give us a master class. She cared for her father, her mother, my mother-in-law, and my brother until they all passed.
Candy, have you heard of Archangel Azrael? I would invite you to look him up.
Which one is it?
Azrael.
Oh, Azrael. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she wondered what their thoughts were about her care. They're fine. They're just so happy to have somebody there to do it so that they didn't have to try and dig around in the universe and find a spirit to help them.
Yeah. It's like a gift that you have, Candy. I think a lot of times people are attracted to us because we're good at that thing, helping people pass or do whatever they need to do.
Why does America think it's so great having a bunch of exhausted people who take medications just to function? It makes no sense. Well, some people, medication, I can tell you with my daughter with the ADHD, it's really helped. And
Yeah.
then it's helped level. So I don't take that. But suppose I'm 75. Supposedly I should be taking 5 to 10 medications a day. If by the charts, I take nothing. I take supplements, but I take weird stuff like lion's mane, mushroom and stuff, but I don't take big pharma. I'm not their friend. And I've talked about this before, and you guys can look it up. There is a DNA test you can have done, and it will run you against all of the pharmacological products that have been tested down to the DNA level, and they will tell if they're effective for you or not. And one of the reasons I've never liked big pharma is the stuff never worked. And I had a whole list of things I couldn't take. And when I had this test run, they said, we really hope you never get majorly psychotic because there's not a med out there you can take. And I said, I think it's because I already am majorly psychotic and I'm armed against it. But it's my thing is 31 pages long, and it tells you, and I gave it to my doctors, and it's a well-esteemed test. As a matter of fact, my doctor, they had just decided to start asking their patients if they want it. If you're on Medicare and you have a cool doctor, you can get it for free. And they will tell you what's in it. And the best thing that I found in mine, maybe not the best, but I don't make plaque. You know, the stuff that they show you that's going to build up in your arteries. I have none. They had scanned my arteries one time when I was having the arrhythmias, and they said, you have no plaque in your body. How could you have no plaque in your body? Because that's when I weighed over 300 pounds, and I ate like a person who weighed 300 pounds, and they couldn't figure out why I had no plaque. Now they know 5% of the people in the world cannot make plaque. I won the lottery.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, if you remember the name of that.
The test?
Yeah.
Well, you can look it up. You can
Okay.
just Google, go DNA genetics test. It's got different names in different parts of the country. But after I got mine done, I had a friend that I was in high school with who went ahead and had hers done. And then once her doctor saw it used to be really expensive. It used to be like $2,500 to get this done. That's one of the things that when they adjusted insulin, that they adjusted getting those kind of tests. It can be, I guess, you'll have to go find out what's like in your area, but because I got mine for free because I knew the guy who's owned the company that created the test, and he offered it to me, and I said, sure. And so they did it. And then I talked to the doctor who developed the test. That's who read my test results. But you wouldn't have to be the guy who developed the test. I mean, anybody can kind of read that test, and it's now permanently attached to all my medical records. We have all kinds of automated medical records in Texas, and you could, when they pull it up, and you can show, there are some things that they gave me. I should never have taken birth control. That's what made me got to 335 pounds. It's so screwed up my hormones.
It's so bad for your body.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. 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 Linda says, yeah, she doesn't do pharma either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some things that they've developed that are miracles.
Mm-hmm.
And they're amazing. And there's other things that you just shake your head and wonder, like, surely Congress knows about this, or somebody,
Oh, they know it. When they say a medicine's effective, it's all on a bell curve. And so it's effective for like 50%. So if you're on either, and Lord knows, anyone who's watched my channel knows that I live in the fringe of some bell curve somewhere. And and we're reading a lot of things in the chat about people who talked it all over with their parents and got it, and people who have done all the stuff between the husband and wife, and then they told the kids. That's always nice. Even if they don't want to hear it, they'll say, "Oh, pshaw, Mom, you're never going to die." Well, you disabuse them of that. We all are.
And the thing is, who do you know in your family that you don't want in charge of your body? You know, and looking at that and who you do.
I have I have two brothers with a medical degree and one that's a lawyer that I wouldn't want anywhere near that paperwork.
Yeah, I've got yeah, definitely. So it's important.
And this is true. You know, worrying about stuff, when you're worrying about something, she's worrying about her daughter, and she said it made her ill. When you worry about stuff, you're like the mind in that poem we read at the beginning of the thing that is always projecting out into the future, but that's not where you are now.
Yeah. And I love that, Sonia. Plus, our kids know if you're projecting that on them. If you're looking at your children, your adult children or your little children or your grandkids and seeing what's wrong and what you can fix instead of seeing what's amazing and shining light on them. It makes a huge change in your relationship. I found that out the hard way. So.
And I'm sorry about your grandmother, dim sum say shenanigans. That's tough. She managed to get her grandmother taken care of, and they wouldn't let her be in the hospital because she kept trying to do that.
I'm sorry.
And some people talking about their parents that are coming back.
I love that. I love that. There's all sorts of ways. So my mom was involved in metaphysics, and one of her best friends, Mary Starr, was a pretty well-known Midwestern reader, intuitive. Mm-hmm. And so we'd get that like for a birthday gift or graduation from high school was a tarot card reading gift. And so anyway, but she told me when she passed, she said, your mom's going to come to you and you're going to feel a warmth in the small of your back. And that's your mama. And I always remember that. And I always feel that hug from her.
Okay. I'm trying to get us out of here in an hour. So
okay.
I had one forgotten, and I'm sorry, Ness, I did forget you, but I'm going to put your question up now.
Yay.
And what do you see? This came in the comments from my post. What do you see unfolding for me in both of the upcoming eclipses? I'm going to do one row of the one that's coming up on the 17th, and then I'll do a second row of 5 on the second one. And if you guys missed it, I didn't send it out like I normally announce, but Andre invited me over on Friday afternoon to have a conversation, and we taped it on his channel. And it took him a while to get it to me. So by the time I got it up, I learned how to do something new, how to get something from someone else's channel and upload it. But it's on my playlist if you go look at it. And he and I discussed this fall and it's not, Andre usually does a lot of political stuff, but he wanted to look at the spiritual side of this fall. So we talked about both of the eclipses there. So
I want to go back and watch that. I saw you guys were on together. And then I saw also you were on with your son and Linda G.
That's going to happen again soon too. So
yeah.
I finally found someone who can out-talk Linda G. My son does not let her dominate the conversation. I mean, Linda's she's worried that people are going to get bored. So
what's the name of your son's channel again?
CLSB Politics, Charles Lawrence Sean Briscoe Politics. And it's a YouTube channel. And what he's doing right now is he's doing a lot of polling, and he's reviewing the battleground states so you can understand why they're called battleground states and what is the theory behind them. Okay. I'm going to hide this, and we're going to look at. Okay, this is you actually are going to have about somewhat the same experience with both eclipses. Actually, you're going to feel good coming out of them. In fact, the first one you're going to feel like the Queen of Wands. These are my bunny cards. And this one coming up on the 17th is going to free you. But it's going to be freeing you from some delusions you've had about how things are going to go. And what is someone you feel had been ripping you off, and you're kind of cutting them off now. And it's hurting your heart to let this person go. But this is the eclipse for release. The one on the 17th is the one for release. Now, the one that's on the 28th, we have 2 eclipses in 1 month. They always come in pairs. So anyway, so this is the 5 of Swords, where you're rearming yourself and deciding what's worth fighting for. And you're going to be more firm in your emotional demands of people. You're kind of worrying a little bit about money, a little bit when this hits. And somehow or another, the person that you let go, you always viewed as a way to get to more prosperity, but you're going to make your own prosperity. King of Wands. Wands mean enterprise and work. And your closing card is the Ace of Pentacles. And that may be why you feel the second eclipse is going to be harder on you than the first. Because if you clean your act up in the first list, in the first one, then you won't. And the second one, you're going to have to be working on yourself a little bit harder. What'd you get, Teri?
Yeah, I get this first eclipse, a new love coming in. So you've got a new chance at something.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be love of yourself, love of your work, love of something that you're doing centered around love. There's going to be serenity in that. Like you're going to be not just releasing, but you're going to be finding some deep trust in what you're doing. The second one, Ness, I see it's like you're looking for signs. This is you searching. Like, what is this supposed to mean? You're going to make something happen. So I think it's going to work out okay. There's going to be celebration with it, but I do think a lot of it's about what you do with the first one. Like you're going to let something go with that first one.
And you may need to think about who or what is it I need to let go. You may need to put it on a piece of paper and burn it in a place that's sort of not going to burn up on you. I always burn it in a shell and then throw it in the toilet and flush it away so the Dallas sewage system can take care of it.
Yeah. I have a old iron bucket that I take out back. So an urn or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. The other people, I'm sorry we didn't get to all of you. I'm somebody who saw her grandfather after he died, and she didn't like him before, but she ended up liking him better. And and people who've had their family with them a long time. And yeah, I got kind of, it's a mommy thrill. I was going through my Facebook, and one of the Facebook groups that's more liberal one that I follow had posted Sean's latest video from YouTube. And so I called him up and I said, "Are you getting more hits on this?" Because it was like a day old or 2 days old. And he said, "Yeah, I couldn't figure out why are those numbers going up." So I told him, "Wow."
He is amazing, you guys. I put his name up on there. It's, when he talks just like you do, I mean, he's excited about what he's saying. He is well-versed, and it just comes out. And it's like, whoa, this person knows what they're doing, really knows what they're doing. Yeah.
Yes. So if anybody knows anyone at the Midas Touch Network that would like to forward some of his videos on, that would be great.
That is a great idea. Sharon Pipe, thank you for.
Thank you, Sharon, for being a dragon slayer, although I don't think we had any dragon show. Maybe she got him before I saw him.
Yeah.
And Barbara, you've done the right thing, and then we're going to get out of here. I'll learn to give space to my son struggling with addiction. It's his problem. And winding you up in it actually gives the addiction strength. So walking away and letting them figure out where the bottom is what you need to do.
Yeah. With love coming in,
Yep.
it kind of diffuses the pain and
Mm-hmm.
the shame. The shame is huge.
I know. And I don't know what kind of addiction it is, but I know that Al-Anon is a great place to go learn how to live with that kind of pain.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that, we're going to take our mystic little selves off. I got to do a reading this month. I'm still doing readings. I go to my website and sign up and get them. I'm doing 3-month, and I'm doing, I still do past life readings, which can be very enlightening.
Yeah.
And I'll be with Danny. I'll be on my show at the same, on 1:00 tomorrow. And I'm doing something with Danny on Wednesday. But like all my things with Danny, I'm doing some with Danny on Wednesday.
Yeah. I love that.
Everybody have a good day.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.